I would say if anybody wants to open up their own brokerage, my sincere advice would be run a team, get successful at running a team within, there's so many different business models out there. Work some sort of arrangement someplace, run a team, have your structure in place, and then you could migrate your team into your own brokerage.
Hey everybody, Gus Floropoulos here along with Alex Karayanidis. Welcome to another edition of the Spotlight. Today we have an amazing guest, Kevin Leatherman, owner of Leatherman Homes and also president of LIBOR. We're very grateful and excited to have you with us. It's really an honor to be able to carve out some time from your busy schedule running a successful operation, and also all the time that you give to LIBOR so that you can help spearhead all the challenges and changes as a leader within the organization. And I think you've been a part of LIBOR now for quite some time. Just doing my research, you were the treasurer, secretary, you were the incoming president-elect, and now president. So thank you so much for being with us, Kevin Leatherman.
Thank you, Gus. Thank you, Alex.
So, so on our show, what we like to do is just open up the opportunity to discuss important things that are going on in our industry, especially locally here in New York, on Long Island, and more importantly, give you the opportunity to just share some of your experiences. There's a lot of people out there in our industry that are, struggling. There's a lot of people that are looking to come into our industry. There's a lot of homeowners that are dealing with the challenge of buying or selling. You have a 30-year experience. I mean,
Yes.
You're in this industry longer than me. I've been in this game over 20 years. And so when I had the opportunity to, just collaborate with an individual like yourself who has such a long tenure in this industry, I mean, you are a professional amongst professionals. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Any insight that you share is super valuable, not just to Alex and I, but also to our audience and the industry as a whole. So we again, thank you for being here with us and taking the time. I'm going to ask you some questions, right?
Sure,
Some
fair enough.
real basic questions. I know you're a Comac, born and raised in Comac, Hofstra grad. Walk us through your steps early in your career. I know you spent time on Wall Street. Walk us through early in your career, what got you from, let's say, a young professional into real estate.
Sure, fair enough. I was attending Hofstra University and I was working in Manhattan trading currencies, and I bought my first property. It was in Long Beach. It was a cooperative at the Parker DeVille, otherwise known as 522 Shore Road.
Nice.
So I bought there, and they had had a building fire prior to that, and all 246 unit owners had to move out. I was the first person to move in post the fire, and what was interesting, I moved in and I started having some issues in the building, and I realized something was not happening correctly with the way it was being managed. So I wound up getting involved, volunteering, got on their board, and then there were certain opportunities to buy other units. So I started buying and selling, and I got my real estate license. And then
Within the project.
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
So at one point, before I had moved out, I had 23 out of 25 active listings in the building.
Oh,
so
wow.
I was very much, active and successful. And then I opened up a business in Long Beach, and I started running it, and I had it open for over a year before I quit my job. And finally, it just didn't make sense. I said, I want to do what I love, and I walked in and I gave notice and left.
So Long Beach is like, it's almost like a different world, right? Like I've done business in Long Beach, Lido Beach, right? That whole stretch. And it seems, I grew up in Astoria, Queens. Leaving Astoria was very hard for me. It took a very dynamic woman and a lot of children to get me out of, where I loved Astoria. Lido has that same component. Like, I have friends that live there, and they never want to leave. It's like it's a crazy dynamic, and it's beautiful, right? Like, you have the beach, and it's
Sure,
awesome.
the Barrier Island is wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, Long Beach reminds me of California. It does. Out of all the North Shore, South Shore, for me, because I was in San Diego for 16 years, it's the closest resemblance to me to living in San Diego.
Wow.
I like Long Beach.
Interesting.
I didn't know you started your career in Long Beach.
I started my real estate career in Long Beach.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Right now, I live in Rockville Center for the past 17 years. I still have a place down in Long Beach, but I'm renting it out at present. But
In that same co-op?
no,
Okay.
different. Down the block, actually. Down the block.
Yeah, co-ops are interesting assets. Like, throughout my career, I've just seen so many of them, in different transactions. But like a lot of the old history, like I remember this one cooperative where this guy bought them for like a penny out of bankruptcy. And I'm not going to talk about the project or the investor, because it's just, sour, subject for some people out there. But they did really well. It was hundreds of units, and they absolutely crushed it. It's one of the dynamics, like as a lender, when a client asks me like, "Hey, I'm thinking about buying a co-op or a condo. What do you think is best?" I give them this advice. I say, and I could be wrong, right? And you'll correct me now. And I actually want you to correct me.
Okay.
I'll say, when you own a condo, you actually own real estate in the sense that you're in predominantly full control of what you can do there, right? Like, nobody can tell you can't have a dog. Nobody can tell you can't rent it. When you own a co-op, you own real estate, but you own technically shares within a corporation or cooperative, and so you're subjected to a board of directors who kind of make the rules, and those rules are pretty consistent with most co-ops. Some are a little more flexible than others, but ultimately you're not fully in the driver's seat. And so, if you want to have that control, like a year from now, you want to rent it out. Well, a condo is going to give you that flexibility, where a co-op, yeah, it might have guidelines like, hey, you live in it for 2 years and you could rent it out, but they could change those guidelines at any time, right? So what's your perspective, let's say, on a co-op versus a condo?
Well, I agree with most of what you just said. However, there is a difference. Condos still can have pet policies. So it's not that you can just do as you please. They're usually more lenient than co-ops as a general statement, but they certainly can have their own pet policy. That's one thing. As far as the other, there is a big fundamental difference, because it also depends upon affordability on that. But I just want to sidetrack and go back to subletting. Condos, you're not necessarily able to rent it out day of purchase. Like in Long Beach, for example, there's two buildings, 666 Shore Road and 650 Shore Road. Those two condominium buildings, I believe they still have the policy where you have to own it for at least 2 years before you're allowed to rent it.
Got it.
So there are, which is a little bit foreign. If we were in Manhattan, you probably wouldn't hear that too much.
Sure.
So you always have to, real estate, as everybody remembers, is hyper-local. So anytime you want to do something, you really have to make sure you check the specifics of what you're looking into to make sure it's a match for what your goals are.
And co-ops in like Manhattan, for example, were the only apartments, right, forever. And one of my mentors and really, really successful financier and executive in the mortgage space, Neil Bader, kind of schooled me on it. He's like, back in the day, because he was in lending in the 80s, and he said, back in the day it was just co-ops, and the boards could be as challenging as they wanted to be. They didn't have to give any rhyme or reason why they didn't allow you to be able to buy. Your financials could be great. Your back then there weren't credit reports, but your financials, your profile, etc. But for whatever reason, they didn't accept you into the building. And it was Donald Trump, if I'm not mistaken, that made that push in Manhattan for condos to really start becoming, more and more prevalent, so that anybody who wanted a really nice apartment can have one in a great part of New York City.
Right.
Yeah, so it's an interesting dynamic. As far as values, right? Do you feel that co-ops and condos are, let's say, equal in the sense of market appreciation and market dynamics, sellability, et cetera, as a real estate agent?
Sure. Gus, I believe as far as marketability, I think your buyer pool is wider with a condominium, because you don't have the board approval process.
Right.
So that's attractive to several people. Some individuals who, depending on what their financial situation is, as far as having documented income in the format that a board wants it in and that they're comfortable with. So it gives you a lot more flexibility in the buyer pool. Take, for example, if you have the cash to buy a condominium, there is no board approval. As long as you have the cash and you're the decision maker, you have a transaction.
Right.
So they both serve.
But how about
a good
market
purpose.
market movement, right? Like and I don't follow these dynamics as closely as you, but in my career, and I've done a good amount of co-ops. Like I cut my teeth in Queens, right? So I did a lot of co-ops, a lot of condos. I always felt that, and I don't have any statistics to back this up, but I always felt that condos moved in a more similar fashion as the general real estate market, where co-ops didn't. Like I could give you examples of co-ops that 10 years ago were X, and they're maybe 10% above that, where condos are 80% above that.
Right. I would say yes. The upside, the appreciation possibility in a condo is greater.
Why do you think that is? Like as somebody who's been doing this for a long time, finance background, super smart, super successful, a lot of transactions. Why do you think that component, because now we're talking about an asset, right? Like at the end of the day, if a square foot costs X, it costs X in that market. Why do you think that possibly, again, like, we're just discussing this, right? Like we don't know why, right? But in your opinion, like why is it that co-ops don't fluctuate in value in either direction, let's say, for the same way that, say, condos do?
Well, I think a condo is more similar to 1 and 2 family homes, where it's more market driven. I think the issue with a co-op, you really have a 3-way transaction. You have a seller, a buyer, and the co-op board / management company, include them in the process.
And they could just block a transaction.
I think the problem is lack of transparency, because it'd be one thing, like you're a lender, so you understand your lending criteria and you understand.
I am a lender.
Thank you. So you understand the guidelines. So you're trying to match borrowers with certain lending programs.
Sure.
Well, so with cooperatives, it's a little confusing sometimes, and it's not transparent, in my opinion, because they're not telling us up front whether, let's say, the cooperative wants a DTI, debt to income ratio, of 35% or less.
Right.
If they would tell us all that, then we would all understand that, and we would only schedule appointments to show buyers that match that criteria.
We had a transaction in Brooklyn where a client, it took him 3 years to buy in the building. He was in contract 4 different times, was rejected 3 times. Finally, the 4th time, he got accepted. And the trick, it wasn't his financials were great. Down payment was spectacular. DTIs were great. Credit profile was great. It was the price of the apartment. The co-op board didn't want the unit to sell above a certain number to like push the values up. And I don't know how he got it done. If there was like some, like negotiations outside of the scope of what we saw, but he was finally able to get it done. And that was a very unprofitable transaction for us, because we worked on 4 individual transactions, and it's not just approving the client, it's approving the building every single time, and all the time that it takes with that. All right, so
Sure.
Wow.
I'm sorry, Alex.
That's okay. I'm learning too. I didn't know that there was such a big difference between condos appreciating and co-ops appreciating.
Yeah.
I had no idea. So I'm learning.
It's
I
a
think
more
you have more
controlled
of a
environment.
swing. You have more. I guess the word's volatility. You have more volatility in a co-op versus a condo. But look, co-ops are good. Can the process be a little bit troublesome or produce anxiety when you're buying or selling? Yes, but it is far superior than renting.
Oh,
Purchasing a co-op.
Purchasing a co-op.
There's no question about that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Can I ask a question? When did you start your company, Leatherman Homes? So you were in Long Beach.
Yes.
You purchased in the development you purchased in. There was a fire. You purchased after. When did you start? Because you've been doing this now 30 plus years.
About 30 years.
So you exit the space of financial services and forex, and you commit to real estate, right?
Yes.
At that point, you start working at a boutique firm, a local company, a national brand. What was your first step?
Well, it was a little bit funny. In Long Beach, I worked for 2 different brokerages. I worked for Gold Realty, which is an independent boutique. Maria Armando was my broker, and then I worked for a short time for Arthur Zimmerman, which was I think it was called the Long Beach Cooperative or the Long Beach Co-op and Condo Cooperative, something like that. It's been a long time ago. And I worked for those to obtain enough points to go from my sales license to my broker's license, and I opened up.
So how many years was that?
That was only about a year.
Oh wow, that's fast.
We should drink to that.
Yeah, no problem.
that
In
was-
1
that was
year,
quick.
that's
That was
pretty
quick.
good. And they also have to sponsor you, right? Like they
Yes.
have to support that move, which
Yes.
means you had great relationships with the people you worked under. You were profitable enough where they didn't feel like what you owed them, and they're like, well, we don't want to help you, right? Because there are brokers that don't support that step for their, let's say, agents that are ready to take that
Right.
step potentially, right? Like I'm not an owner of a real estate company. I
Right.
can't make that judgment call. And a lot of people do that and fail, right? Like it's not easy to take that step from working for a company, the structure, the resources, everything there in place, and then going out on your own and succeeding. It's no different than any other business, right? Like you open up a restaurant. I don't know what the statistics are, but
Sure.
it's like 90% fail in the first year. So you spent 1 year as a realtor, and you're like, I want to do this, and not just do it. I wanted to do it my way. I want to maximize every moment of my life, not just focusing on real estate, but I want the revenue. I want control of that so that I can grow my brand, grow a company, because I'm a businessman. Tell us about that.
Well, Gus,
Before
it's-
that, cheers and
yeah.
congrats to that.
Cheers.
Oh man, this is a big shot, Alex. You got to make smaller shots. This is a big shot.
That's okay. We're okay.
Oh,
We're
man.
big boys. Yeah, congrats to that. So a year after you get your salesperson's license, you transition and get your broker's license, and you're like, all right, let's go. We'll go all in. And then you open up Leatherman Homes.
Right. In the West End of Long Beach. And it's really about being entrepreneurial. I've always been entrepreneurial my whole life. It's so even from being a paper boy, as a teenager, and then I started cutting my neighbors' lawns at one point also. So I went out and bought a lawnmower, and I just ran my own business in the neighborhood.
What did the lawnmower cost?
Well, actually, my dad financed it, so I forget what it cost, but my dad paid for it, but he was the bank. And with my father, he says, I'll lend you whatever you need, but you have to pay me back, and if you don't pay me back, there's no more loans. So however much time I needed, I just told him I needed double the time, so that this way he would feel he was prepaid, so I had good credit. My father
That's
wasn't going to play
awesome.
games, so you have to.
Did you pay him back interest?
No interest,
No
but
interest.
you have to be prompt.
Yeah.
You have to honor what the agreement was.
Yeah, or else he'd default on him and.
Yeah, otherwise
a
there's
judgment against-
there's no going back
Yeah, a lien
for
on
another
the,
loan.
I'll lean on the lawnmower.
And the lawnmower.
No, but I was very entrepreneurial. Well, I grew up one of 6 boys, so we were either-
6?
one of 6 boys. Yes, so we were either cutting somebody's lawn, snow shoveling, doing something.
How close in age are you and your brothers?
The 4 oldest were born in 4 years.
Wowzers.
So we had 4 and 4 years,
Oh, your
then a
poor
5-year
mother.
break and a 2-year break.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
number 4.
You're number 4?
So you're the baby of the first bunch.
Baby of the first bunch. That's why I always, when it came to curfew and things, I always wanted to go with the 3 older ones.
But you kind of got the shaft on the hand-me-downs because you got the, and then by the time they went to, because I have 5 kids and I
Okay.
remember like how it worked. Like our first 3 boys, the third guy kind of got all the hand-me-downs, and he got good stuff, but then there was a little break, and then the next 2, and I don't have 5 boys, I have 4 boys and 1 girl, but the next 2, they didn't really have to deal with the hand-me-downs. So you were the hand-me-down king for sure.
Oh, sure, yeah.
For sure.
And was your dad an entrepreneur?
No, my dad is a thermal consultant engineer.
He's an engineer, yeah.
So where'd you get the
Serious.
entrepreneurship spirit
I don't know.
coming from an engineer father?
Well, he's very structured. He's a very structured, very bright man. But sometimes science was my worst subject, and that's his best subject. So
Sure.
I really don't quite understand that.
But you're a numbers guy.
I'm a numbers guy.
Yeah.
I'm a finance guy. So
Yeah.
well, that comes naturally.
Yeah.
When I was going to school, I originally wanted to go for marketing, but I figured I don't know how I could support myself doing that. So I went from marketing to accounting, and accounting was a little too dry for me. And if I ever became an auditor, that would just not work. So then I switched over to finance, which is wonderful. It was more creative. And Wall Street was great. It was just, I didn't want to be compelled to wake up at a ridiculous hour. And it was nice. It was a young person's business. It was fun. But I'm so glad I switched because
Yeah.
I left on my terms.
Well, real estate,
Well, you made the right decision. 30 plus years doing it.
for sure. Real estate. So I was a stockbroker, and I had a great run, and I learned so much, and I would never trade that for anything. The one thing that it taught me when I migrated from the area of financial services and money management to real estate finance was that I went from having a product that was a want to a product that was a need. There's a need for home ownership. I don't know much about your, dynamic of, your ancestry, your grandparents, et cetera. My parents, just like Alex, were Greek immigrants, right? They migrated to America, and the stories of a lot of these immigrants, not just in the Greek communities, in all communities in America, because we're all immigrants, right? To some extent
Yes.
in this country, they're spectacular. I don't
Yeah.
think there's a more beautiful story of anybody leaving their country under any type of duress and coming to a new country where they don't even speak the language and becoming successful in their own right. And there's levels to success, right? We have the guys that really crushed it, and we have the guys that created a nice situation, stability, raised their families, gave their children the opportunity to go to good schools. Like myself, I had the opportunity to gain education my parents didn't have, and then through that process become successful to my own right? Like, I'm not trying to pretend like I'm like, I'm not that guy, but I've accomplished what my parents wanted for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's the American dream in its core, is to provide a life for the people you care about, right? Like, a lot of people don't have kids, especially younger people don't even think that way anymore, right? Like children and stuff like that. But what you leave behind is important, right? And so I think that's all of our legacy in different ways. The way I look at real estate, it's the most important asset that we could own, and it's probably the easiest asset that we can own because of the banking system. The banking system is designed in a way to accommodate leverage at a very high percentage. You want to buy
Correct.
Microsoft stock, you're like, oh, I love Microsoft, I don't know what it's trading at, let's say $200 a share. Well, you kind of need $200 to buy a share. And if you want a purposeful trade, right, you need hundreds of thousands of dollars to make a trade that's going to make you money. Well, you like a house that's $500,000, you can leverage, if you're a veteran, 100% of that. And if you're a first-time home buyer, 97% under the affordable products, 96.5% under the government-based programs, and under certain dynamics, you can get a grant or a concession that can offset the majority of the cost. You could theoretically be in a real estate asset with no capital, which is crazy. And that asset, if you own it over a long period of time, like the Case-Shiller Index has proven, long durations in real estate, let's say 10 years plus, you're a winner. And I'm all about that, educational component, sharing that with people, and then through that dynamic, growing, right? Because I want to do it with you again and again and again, and I want you to look back 20 years and say, wow, I bought 10 properties over 20 years, I sold 3 of them off, paid the other 7, and I am in really good shape. I don't need a pension. I don't need a 401k, although I think you should have a 401k.
Right.
Pensions aren't as available, I think, in today's economy and the dynamic of how companies are.
Right.
But real estate is really your easier way to get into not just stability, right? Pride of home ownership, all the positives that come from that, all the
Correct.
tax benefits that come from that, but it's your easiest way to create wealth, right? And so you saw that early on in your career. You took that risk. You left the financial services sector because I'm sure you would have crushed it in Forex. You opened up your own brand. So now let's talk about the first few years of owning your own company, right? And the challenges and some of the successes, but more so the challenges that you face with. I think there's a lot of young entrepreneurs that are in real estate, very similar to where you were, 30 years ago, 28 years ago or so. And I think what you could share with them could really have a tremendous impact. So walk us through some of that.
Sure. I would probably say, well, the good, the bad. The good, I made a decision and I went for it. That was the good. I did it. The bad is I did it prematurely. What I should have done was I should have possibly run a team within somebody else's brokerage first before going and launching my own brokerage.
The management piece.
Yes.
Hindsight, you know that now.
Hindsight.
Yeah.
Hindsight. I would say if anybody wants to open up their own brokerage, my sincere advice would be run a team, get successful at running a team within. There's so many different business models out there. Work some sort of arrangement someplace. Run a team, have your structure in place, and then you could migrate your team into your own brokerage. But I wound up going into it a little prematurely. So my first couple of years, I operated at a loss. It was a good thing I had savings, from my career on Wall Street, but I could have saved myself a lot of money and a lot of aggravation because it was a lot of testing and experimenting on what worked and what didn't work.
Sure.
Unfortunately, I was doing it out of my own funds.
But you learned.
Oh, I learned. I learned, and what it is the drive to be successful, Alex, is what makes it happen.
Yeah.
Because it was like when you talk about contacting leads, going back, I'll date myself, like little index cards with a little box of
That's awesome.
with leads where I had new leads coming in, other leads coming out, and I would just go through them from A to Z, and that's what I had to do. I had to call. This was much more phone business back then. So I was contacting these people, and I would just take the lead as far as I could, and then just keep going around. I'd start at A, maybe I'd finish my day at G. The next day I'd pick up, and I'd keep going around the alphabet. And as I have new leads coming in, and then I have certain opportunities that were taken to their fullest extent, and I had to work that quote unquote book of business.
Yeah.
I mean, I had no choice. That's what I had to do to be successful, and so my follow-through skills were excellent, and then I learned.
How awesome is that?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the process.
Back then, there was no, forget social media. There was no softwares. There was no CRMs. It's funny, you just made
There's no cell phones. You didn't even
there was no
have
cell
your
phones.
clients all in your phone, right?
No,
And
we had an
I remember when I had the sorry, Alex.
No, you're good.
I remember when I had the Rolodex.
Yeah.
And I understand you've been in the business longer than me, but technology has really taken over the last 15 years, maybe 17, right? And I remember when I got rid of my Rolodex, like I kept it on my desk probably for 5 years longer than I needed it. Same thing with a stapler. Same thing with whiteout, same thing with so much that we're like, the office environment had. Like everything is digital, everything's electronic.
I have to share a story. I had an accordion, day 1 to day 31, an accordion from Office Depot, whatever the stores are, an accordion style
file.
Folder.
Yeah.
And I would put leads, like you said, in index cards. If I called them today, I'd put them in the accordion 5 days later, and I'd go that day where I woke up to start working and prospecting. I'd open up my accordion folder, and I'd pull out the index cards I have to call for that day. I loved it. But
he's very structured.
No, but it was very basic, but it
yeah,
works.
It was very basic, but it works.
And by the way, throughout my career, when I've tried to coach certain agents, I tell them, I don't care what system you have, just have a system.
Yeah.
So if your system is, and I'm not proud about this, index cards on your kitchen table, if that's what works for you,
it works.
You're doing it. You're prospecting consistently, and you will have results. So I think agents really need to not focus on the specific technology or the process that they're using.
Agreed.
but just have a system that works for how you are.
Agreed. Yeah.
So you are the president of LIBOR,
Yes.
and this is really a charitable position because you're giving your time, in some cases your resources.
It's a volunteer position.
100%.
Yeah.
You're taking away from your business, your family, and your life.
You don't get paid for it.
You don't get
No,
paid
it's
for
not
it.
paid. It's volunteer.
Forget about the not getting paid. It's the time, right? Because the component of the money is one thing, but the time component. So you're doing this. You've been doing it for years in the sense that you had a secretary, treasurer position. You were the president-elect, right? So you had to be on the board for that. As a professional, as a leader, right? As an executive, right? You own your own business. You own real estate. You're a decision maker. You have to make decisions every single day.
Right.
What was the main motivation for you to take such a large responsibility within the organization in today's day and age, where you have a lot of volatility, you have a tremendous amount of need for, I feel, education. There's so many people. I think you and I were talking about it with Alex. 10,000 new agents in the last 5 years. These agents don't have that experience of 30 years. That experience is tremendous, right? What was your primary motivation to take this responsibility at this time?
Sure, Gus. I would say, look, it's about giving back. Real estate has been very, very good to me as far as being a providing source of stable income. So the longer you're in this business and when you're a productive professional, as time goes on, it gets better for you. So it was really about giving back and volunteering. And I feel very blessed that I'm actually president at the right year, because my strength is buyer brokerage. So I understand that subject very well. I'm an ABR, which is an accredited buyer representative. So with the NAR lawsuits, with the class action lawsuits on the subject, for me, it winds up positioning me in a very good place to help the organization, because it's a subject matter that I know very well. And LIBOR, the Law Island Board of Realtors, does many, many things. They handle advocacy, through their government affairs. They handle grievance, professional standards. There's many different areas that they help members in running their business or learning the business. But I feel that my skill set of what I bring is really, perfect for this year. So I think it's a great match.
That's big stuff right there. That's tremendous.
It is. He volunteered to do it.
I think most people would run away from that, right? Like, you're talking a pivotal time in the industry where the challenges are really like piling up. You have had two of the most challenging years
Probably the last 15, 20 years.
Yeah, I'd say even longer, right?
Yeah.
Because you have so many different angles, right, of inventory-related constraints, interest rate, affordability related constraints, and then you add a component of the dynamic, very similar to what I went through with Dodd-Frank, where it's not necessarily adjusting, right? It's figuring out how you're going to earn a living. How are you going to pay your bills? How are you going to provide for your family? And there's a lot of agents out there that might be single, and it's less of a dynamic. But the majority of people out there, they have big responsibilities, huge.
Yeah, imagine having a family you have to provide for.
Yeah, and so it's great that I think that you're doing what you're doing at the time that you're doing it. I think that leadership at the right time is paramount to success, and I wish you the absolute best in navigating this ship. On that topic, we've done a lot of research on this. We spent, I want to say, I don't even know how many hours Alex and I have spent researching different dynamics from a legal standpoint all over the country on this NAR debate or this NAR. Like, you have the settlement now, right? But prior to the settlement, there's a lot of theoretical outcomes, and even with the settlement, there's still more theoretical outcomes because it's not fully concluded, right? And then you have great successful guys out there. I'm not going to say their names that operate firms, national brands, regional brands, local brands, giving their opinion. And I know it's for you, it's very challenging because you own a company, and so you're an operator, but you're also the president of an organization. So you have to be very cautious with how you share information, and I respect that tremendously. From my perspective, as a lender, as somebody who's been in this industry 20 plus years, and I've worked with tremendous people, great people, I represent buyers and owners in a refinance, right? I don't represent sellers. So that dynamic is a little bit away from me. But I know that if you have a first-time home buyer, they need a realtor. They need a professional to guide them through that There is no question that if you've never purchased a real estate asset and you don't have experience because your dad is a real estate tycoon, that you need guidance and you need a pro in your corner. You need a good realtor just as much as you need a good attorney. There's no question about it. That's my opinion.
I think even more so.
But I'm just saying, right? So to create a dynamic or an environment where you're starting to complicate the compensation of these professionals that are guiding these individuals. Listen, I've seen realtors represent buyers take them years before that individual gets into a home for so many reasons, right? There's insecurity, there's, posturing, right? They think they're on Shark Tank and they're going to negotiate, right? And the list goes on and on and on, right? The dynamic of complicating how a buyer's agent earns a living and is compensated in a transaction, I think is somewhat silly. And beyond disrespectful, because you're discrediting an area of the market that allows for transparency. These people negotiate on behalf of people that have no experience in real estate. It's crazy to think that that's actually the reality that we're faced with. Now, I know that there's obviously ways to protect buyers, brokers, and as you're I guess it's an accredited title. You said
ABR.
ABR. Not as the president of LIBOR, not even as the owner of Leatherman, as somebody who has experience on these matters. What's your advice to real estate agents who really specialize on that side of transactions? What's your advice to them to protect themselves, to allow them to be fairly compensated and also protect their position in a transaction?
To a buyer's agent?
Yeah,
To a
if I could
To a
ask you
buyer's
that.
agent. Sure,
Yeah.
sure. So I think, first off, I think there should be full transparency. So when there's a consultation with a buyer, which is really what should happen. So instead of consumers going to different websites, portals, and filling out a form and then having a couple of agents call you, the consumer would be much better served if they would actually ask around to get a referral or go on Google and just do your own research to find an agent to consider representing you, to consider who you would hire. So
So
think
do
of
like
it
the
more that.
research on the
Do
agent.
some research.
Yeah.
I mean, in this day and age, everybody Googles everything. You're worried about where you're going for, a $50 meal. It's like, you're buying.
I needed to figure out how to do something with my car.
Yes.
Because like the technology is so wonky now. It's not like, a Buick in '88, right? So you need to do something basic. I'm like,
It's a basic research,
Yeah.
which and everybody can do it right from their phone.
Yeah.
While they're doing something else, they can multitask. So the issue is we should start from there. But I think the issue is a good agent should have a consultation and explain to the consumer the different ways you could buy a house. You could work with an agent where you don't have to sign with them, where you're not contractually obligated to work with them, but that agent would most likely be representing the seller's best interest. So they're not going to advocate for you. So they'll service your needs, but they're not advocating for you. There's a big fundamental difference. So you'd be what would be called an unrepresented customer.
Yeah.
Different is if you want the agent to advocate for your best interest and then you're going to retain them. And most good career agents will require a written buyer representation agreement in order to do so. So the first thing to do is to have the consultation with the consumer and go over the different ways to buy a house, and more of it in a consultative fashion, and say we could go this way and here's pro and con, we can go this way pro and con, and we can go this way pro and con. The agent then at that point may say, but this is how I operate. So they may say these two choices, that's not what I'm about, that may not be what my brokerage is about. This is how I do things, or this is how my brokerage does things, and here's how we work compensation. And if it's a match, it's a match. If it's not a match, thank you for your time, part company, and each party moves on.
Sure.
So I think that's where we have to really get back.
And that's been
to
around for a
basics.
while. Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because
Yes.
I've worked with agents that require that no matter what for a long time, and then a lot of agents they don't request any of that stuff.
Isn't that best practices though? Isn't that in the best interest of a
In California, you were in lending for almost 20 years, and
Yeah,
you were
16 plus
really
years.
like, you worked with a lot of real estate agents. You were more active with realtors than I am. I mean, was that something that was common?
I think it was common, but shouldn't that be the course of action that a first-time family takes? Like, I'm not summoning Mount Everest without my Sherpas.
Yeah,
right?
the Sherpas are important.
With the
yeah.
I'm not going on
The
this
Sherpas
trail
are
from
important,
base
yeah.
camp. I'm not even getting to base camp without my Sherpas or some guidance. I don't understand where there's an issue with a buyer's agent representing a family.
Well,
Explain.
Alex and Gus, here's the real issue of what's broken, because in my opinion, it really is broken. Human behavior has changed, and what's happening is consumers are going on the internet, wherever they're going,
The internet.
and they're clicking, pointing, or they're going into an open house. So what's happening is the consumer's going on this journey to purchase a house, and they're going for the product first.
On their own.
On their own, or to whoever happens to respond to the text message or respond to that form you fill out on a website.
The
Yeah.
inquiry.
So
yep.
that is where the problem is.
They haven't even crunched numbers if they can even get financing.
Oh, we're not even talking about numbers. We're
Yeah.
talking about who do you want to spend time with. Look, if any of us want to go buy a new, sport jacket, it's a transaction. It's a very quick transaction. Whether
Yeah.
we do it online or we do it in the store, it's quick. When you're going to purchase a home, you're going on a multi-month journey with somebody. So instead of determining which property you want to see, you really should take a step back and say, you know what? Why don't we look to see who we want to do business
I
with?
love it.
That's
love
what
it.
the consumer should be doing. So, and by the way, that goes for whether you want to have a signed agreement with an agent or you just prefer to go straight to the listing agent. Whatever your concept is of shopping, you really should at least understand what your options are as a consumer, understand the pro and con of each possible path that you may take to going through the home buying process, so that you're fully informed of how you wish to do it. Because I think it's a little ridiculous that if you're just going to go into an open house and you're just going to have to go through the process with whatever agent happened to be standing in the open house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was no decision. Like you take more decision making in what you're having for lunch. I mean, think about that. If
Yeah,
you're
I mean,
ordering
I
in
make
lunch,
reservations
you're-
at a restaurant. There's a
you're
specific
talking about-
waiter that I want there. If he's not there, I'm not even going to the
Sure,
restaurant.
but that's like dinner. But even if you're ordering Uber Eats, something simple for lunch, you're deciding more about lunch special number 4 or lunch special number 7 than you are about buying a home.
And that's
It's a little ridiculous.
That's like educational, right? So like when you're thinking about it, right, it's like the lack of education of the experience, the transaction. There's so many situations out there, right? So it's like hard to pinpoint a negative here or a negative there, but like I've seen transactions where buyers that I've pre-approved that are not working with an agent on deal, they were working with an agent, but for whatever reason, they walked into an open house on their own, the agent wasn't with them, something happened along the mix, and now there's no representation for them in the negotiation. And I think that's a big mistake. I think the right real estate professionals can mitigate that correctly. There are agents out there that can definitely mitigate that, make sure that they have the goals of their listing relationship intact while properly being transparent with the prospective client that's looking to buy. No question about it, because I know plenty of people like that out there. But that's not always the case.
Right,
And-
but Gus, we have to go back to something basic. You have to understand, when you negotiate with anybody in life, you have to understand whose team the players are on. So the
100%.
first starting point is the agent on team seller or are they on team buyer?
Correct.
You have to really, just because somebody is taking you out to look at properties does not mean they are on team buyer, meaning where they're advocating for the buyer. I could take you out Saturday afternoon and show you houses. I might be representing the seller. Alex may be the seller, and I may be advocating for his best interest, not your best interest. Even though you contacted me, you didn't retain me, so I am servicing you as a customer, as an unrepresented customer. And by the way, we should really back up to some basic terminology. There's customer and there's client. I think we should really break it down in simple English. I represent the seller or I represent the buyer. You want to hear very simple terminology from the agent. So just ask the question. If you're confused, just stop, do a timeout. Who do you represent?
Who do you represent? That's a great question.
That
right?
seems simple. Buyer or seller.
Yeah. So
One or
that's,
the other. Just
yeah.
tell me, just be very, very clear.
But it's not like that right now.
Yeah, but Kevin, you've represented both.
Right.
I'm sure throughout your career many times. I mean, I don't even know if you keep statistics, but you've sold. If I've been in the industry for 20 years and I've done well over 1,000 transactions, I'm not quite at 2,000, but I'm well over 1,000. I mean, you've helped
A couple thousand or more.
yeah, thousands of
No,
people.
over 1,000. I don't have the exact
Yeah, yeah.
number, but it's up there.
And in those numbers, you've helped buyers and sellers sometimes on the same transaction, right?
Yes.
So give us like maybe one or two pointers on how you were able to mitigate that balance. That's a tough balance because now you've got, Alex is looking to sell at X plus, that's his number. And now you've got buyer who's coming in and you're a knowledgeable real estate professional mitigating that challenge right there. Couple of, pointers for a lot of the
Sure.
community out there.
Sure. Well, the first part is I have to understand who my client is, who I'm advocating for. So right there, I have to understand whose team I'm on, because that's going to affect my vocabulary, what I'm saying, how I'm saying it. I'm still being honest, but I have to understand who my principal is.
Right.
And I want to clarify a point. The party that's funding me may not necessarily be the one that I'm advocating for.
Sure.
So representation versus compensation are two different subjects. For example, I may be advocating for you, Gus, as a buyer, but Alex is a seller, so he's compensating me, but I'm representing you.
Sure.
So that's why the one you're with doesn't necessarily mean that that's the one that I'm advocating for and they're compensating me. That's why this industry is very, very confusing. And what happens is, again, consumers go to websites, they click, they fill out a form, an agent contacts them, and they're really not paying attention to who's representing who. And you're
The
going through
consumer
process.
isn't. The consumer
The
isn't.
consumer isn't, and I think really what's broken down, and I hate to say this, but it's really because of the internet. In the old-fashioned world, before pre-internet, consumers would either go through newspapers or they would walk into a
I
physical
remember
real
those
estate
days.
office.
I remember the newspaper days.
Right, but
I miss those days.
you would have a face-to-face conversation with an agent. So young first-time buyer with an agent, you'd have a one-on-one. And because of the internet, what's happening is the buyers are either just jumping, running, going into a public open house,
Yeah.
or they're just filling out a form and saying, "Can you show me this house Saturday afternoon at 1 o'clock?" And what's happened is it's really, and I'm not trying to blame the public here, but the public really doesn't give the agents the proper time, because I really want to make sure we understand something. In order for an agent to schedule an appointment with a buyer to show you a property, we have to go over if I'm representing you or if I'm representing the seller. So we have to square that away, because when I schedule the appointment, I have to tell them by New York State law, I have to disclose if I'm representing you. So you and I have to square away if I'm representing you as a buyer or if I'm representing the seller. We have to understand how we're going to work together before I can even schedule the appointment. And here's the other issue. We can't just say we'll figure it out when we meet at Saturday at 1 o'clock.
How many agents do you think do that though? Like not as a percentage, would you say more don't actually take care of that piece up front and just kind of wing it?
I think several agents try. I think some of the public doesn't give them the opportunity to finish. But just so we're clear, an agent shouldn't be showing you property unless they've gone through who they're representing. And that should also be documented. New York State law requires us to give you 2 disclosure forms. I have to give them to you. I request that you sign them. If you sign them, great. If you don't, then I have to have an affidavit on file in my paperwork in my office saying I gave it to Gus, you declined to sign it. Doesn't mean I can't do business with you. I told you who I represent. You opted not to give me an e-signature on it. So then I have to fill the affidavit. And so my paperwork's square, and I could still work with you, but because you might just say, I don't want to sign anything.
Yeah.
I think they have it way tougher on the real estate side than we do on the lending side. I think they do.
I think the journey for realtors with
tough.
with clients is it's a different type of stress, right? And it's more time consuming in the sense that it's physical. I don't physically go with people to look at homes.
Right.
I don't physically go, sorry, Kev. I don't physically go to a home to pitch somebody that I'm the guy to sell your home and then deal with listing that home, prepping that home, staging that home. You need to improve that home, right? You could go 2-3 weeks. You're having
You need to market the home.
and then your marketing crew coming in and then all that stuff.
Yep.
But on my side, there's other stress. Right?
Sure.
Because we have people that lie to us. I just had a guy, Kev. I mean, literally yesterday, sent me a bank statement. Sent my team a bank statement. My team partner, she came up to me. She's like, Gus, I need you to look at this. And I looked at it, and I'm like, come on.
Wow.
Like,
Old school whiteout, huh?
It was just like one of those things where like it caught me by surprise. In today's day and age, it also insulted me. Like, if you're gonna do something so dumb, do it well. Like, Jesus,
Right.
What's wrong with you? Like, my forget my high schoolers or my collegiate child. My elementary school children would have done a better job. And that was a quick call. We can't do business with you. Thank God, it wasn't like a deal in contract or anything like that. It was like a quick call. We can't work with you. Oh, why? I'm like, you know what? You know what you sent me. We're not going to dive into it. We're just not going to work with you. Like, if you're going to do dumb things and you're that, dumb to do them in a dumb way,
Right.
oh, my God. What a liability. But that's a different, podcast altogether.
But Gus, your role, when somebody comes to you for a mortgage, they understand who the lender is. They understand the concept. They're coming to you.
Sure.
To be lent money.
Correct.
So it's very clear what your job function is. When they come to us, and I guess you would say you're really not advocating because you're really providing a service.
100%.
And you're delivering the financing for the purchase.
Yep.
For example. So that is very clear. Everybody understands, including when the 2 real estate attorneys are involved, the 2 real estate agents that are involved, they understand your role in the transaction. It's very, very clear. All right, including your processes and your underwriter, they all understand you're on team lending.
Yep.
Okay, and that if the transaction's not going to happen unless you fund the loan. So
we fund every time, Kev.
Right. So that's
You're 100% batting average.
I mean, throughout my career, there's
You're high.
I don't
have
know,
a
I'm
good-
super
you-
high,
you have
but
a good
there's
betting
always a
average.
percentage of
You're
deals
high,
that
but
don't
at least
wake
everybody
me.
understands, and there's no ambiguity of your purpose in the transaction. Whereas with agents, with licensees, that's where we have a challenge, because a lot of times the consumer says, oh, well, John is my agent. Well, John may be your agent, but he's not your advocate. He's not your buyer agent. He's actually your broker agent, which really means he's a sub-agent of the listing agent.
Wow.
So his loyalty is not with the buyer, his loyalty is with the seller.
Wouldn't a solution, I mean, I guess it sounds simple to me, wouldn't a solution be that any buyer has to be represented by a buyer agent and any seller has to be represented by a seller agent, and just keep the lanes separate, but the highway's the same?
I feel that works for first-time buyers without a doubt. I think that's like almost a prerequisite. But if you're an investor and you've done 5, 10 transactions,
Sure.
and you own and manage from residential to commercial real estate assets, it's a different dynamic.
So you can represent yourself because you have enough
All
experience?
I'm saying is somebody, and I've had the pleasure of working with some really, really great, successful guys. They can negotiate deals. They don't need anybody. They don't even need an attorney to read. They're going to read that contract. They are so far ahead on the game.
Advanced
It's
investors.
no different than like when I was a stockbroker, a guy who has the experience, a guy who knows the option chain, knows how to manage money. Does he need a broker? No. He wants one because maybe he doesn't want to deal
Sure.
with that shit.
Sure.
But, that's different, right? The need versus the want. A first-time home buyer needs an advocate who's going to have their best interest in every step of the transaction, needs to ensure that they are knowledgeable, educated. My biggest thing, and you know this, is to give our clients the information and the knowledge.
Education.
Yeah, and I don't like saying education because that sounds condescending, but let me give you the information and the knowledge. Let me give you all the dynamics.
Including the options, because that's really what you're...
And
Absolutely.
short term versus long term, because we got to cover that as well. And then you make that decision, but make it with confidence. And when you have the math, and you're a numbers guy just like me, when you have the math, numbers don't lie, that math makes sense, and you find that asset that's checking most of those boxes, because today, you're not going to check all the boxes unless you're building it ground up, right? You check most of those boxes, you better pull that trigger. You better pull that trigger, because there's no inventory. There's no inventory, and you've seen it more than me because you represent buyers so much. But that arc of a home buyer, the character arc, it's insane. Like you go through, they think they can negotiate. They fail, and then finally they're ready. That process could be a year, 2 years.
But guys, well, a few things. Alex, I just wanted to address. There's different ways a buyer can work with an agent on representation. So it's not so simple as just saying, have the agent represent me. Well, that's fine, but what happens if you want to buy my own listing? Because now that's complicated, because now I already have my own seller client.
So you're representing the buyer, but you also have a listing that the buyer is interested
Correct.
in. Got it.
So now we get into dual agency, and that's a whole nother conversation unto itself. That's why this business, it's very specific. So it really depends upon who the players are, who the buyer is, who the seller is, what are the agency relationships, which really what it comes down to is when you work with an agent, you decide who you want to do business with, you really want to make sure they cover what I call a law of agency, that they understand the different options that you have as consumers, as buyers and sellers, and then they also cover the compensation. So you really want to make sure that they're covering those two things. So to be very blunt, instead of agents being so focused about the beautiful photography, the videos, the drone shots, the night photos,
Yeah.
The nice dancing and music on Instagram and everything else that's funny, and it's entertaining.
It's fun, right?
It's entertaining. But when it comes down to the business, I think the most important things are an agent that will take the time to go over your different options on law of agency and your different options on representation.
I love it.
So that to me is the meat and potatoes.
That's great advice.
That's the
It's very
heart
good.
of the business. You have to cover that subject.
All right, so I'm gonna ask you one more serious question, and then we're gonna go into our goofball questions. So, 30-year veteran in the industry,
That's great.
super successful.
Yeah.
You're giving your time in a leadership role within.
Sorry, Gus, but that's a two-way street. I myself, like other LIBOR volunteers, are giving, but we're also receiving. I work with a great group of volunteers, and I learn from them, just as some of them learn from me. It's a two-way street.
Sure.
So it's really wonderful. I have been surrounded by some spectacular individuals, smarter than me, more productive than me, more. It's been a pleasure.
That's
so,
awesome.
so it's really, it's enriched my life personally and professionally. So that's why I'm saying it's like giving back, but you're also
The
receiving.
balance is there.
It's wonderful.
That's
Yeah.
great.
So I'm going to ask you for some advice that you can share with two groups of people. First group of people is, we went through 2 very challenging years in the real estate landscape. Some people have done well. Most people have not. And so what's some advice that you would give to a real estate professional who is on the cusp of quitting? They've been in the industry, it could be 2 years, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years. Full-time, committed to the craft, and they haven't had success over the course of the last 24 months or so. What would be some advice that you would give them, good, bad, or indifferent?
Sure. It's very, very simple. Communicate to those people that know you. So, prospecting. So, turn your cell phone off, or if you're going to use your cell phone for outgoing communication, don't receive incoming. But be focused. Put aside time in your calendar, whether you're an early morning person, whether you're right after lunch, whether you're in the evening. That's what's great about this business. You could do business when it's convenient for you.
Yeah.
So, and again, whether it's by phone, text, email, you need outgoing communication on a regular and consistent basis. And as opposed to buying leads off of portals or spending money on Facebook advertising or Google pay-per-click or many, many other things, I think you would do much better communicating to people that might know you. Because if somebody knows you, likes you, trusts you, that's a good starting point. The other thing is, you might say, well, why should I call my friend Susan or my friend John? The issue is, well, then maybe what you should do is reposition yourself and just say, John, I'm a full-time, real estate professional. I happen to have some extra time. I know that you and your spouse are not moving right now, but do you happen to know of anybody that might need my services? I have more room in my pipeline.
Plant as many seeds every single day. It's that saying you gave me, plant good seeds in good soil, and you harvest a good crop.
Yeah.
You got to keep planting seeds.
That's a good script.
Yeah, and you are always about.
That's a good script.
From Alex is a mentor of mine. He's given me great guidance.
And that was free, guys.
Thank
was
you.
free. That was free. Like, making outgoing phone calls, texts, or emails is not about money.
Yeah.
It's about being organized, having a structure, and being consistent. Look, it's the same thing as going to the gym. All right.
For sure.
Or if you're doing anything athletic, the more that you do something consistently, whether you're a tennis player or whatever sport you're playing, your body becomes accustomed to
Sure.
it, and it's a lot easier. You
Yep.
don't go to the gym for a year, and then you go the first day going to the gym, you're going to feel
You
it.
ever read the book The Slight Edge?
No.
It's a great
What
book.
you're talking about is the slight edge.
It's a great book.
It's the little steps, little actions consistently every single day, compounding interest, for example, that over time you have a quantum leap. People want a quantum leap. I have, my older son is 21, right? He's expecting this quantum leap into success, be on a yacht, private plane, whatever it is that these kids want. It doesn't happen like that. The quantum leap happens from consistency, hard work, whatever industry you're in, those little steps. Now you could get lucky, right? And buy
Right.
Bitcoin at $8, right? And crush it. But the odds are slim to none. All right, next question.
Yes.
So we covered the agent that's, struggling. What advice would you give to a individual, whether young or older, who is thinking about entering the real estate space? We like to think full-time. There's a lot of part-timers that do well, but we want to think full-time. What advice would you give to an individual who is having these thoughts in this environment where they're like, I don't know, rates are high. I don't know, there's all these struggles in the industry. What's your advice as a seasoned real estate professional veteran with a ton of experience, not as the president of LIBOR, not as the owner of a successful brokerage firm, as a realtor? What's your advice?
Run.
No, look. I think anybody.
That's not true.
I'm teasing.
So not
And-
true.
Well, I don't know why 80% of agents don't make it past the first 5 years or
88% of agents don't make it after 5 years.
yeah. Why
That's
is
better
that?
than
So,
restaurants.
right, but I think what the issue is,
Really?
I think
don't
90%
worry
in the
about
first
your
2 years.
quote unquote split, your rate of pay. That's not the issue. The issue is you want to be around other individuals who are successful, other individuals that have a good, clean reputation. Which again, you can go on Google and look to see who's consistently productive. I would highly recommend they consider either going to a company that actually has training or joining a team. But I think it's all about who you spend time with, where are the opportunities. I think that's what's very, very important. The other thing is, if you join an agency and you realize it's not a good fit, whether it's after 1 month, 2 months, 5 months, if it's not the right fit, exit. And you don't want to
Pivot.
be bouncing around, but yes, Alex, exactly, pivot.
Yep.
But you want to do your research, because I think if you're going to be a new agent, you want to make sure that you're joining the right agency.
Sure.
So I would say at a minimum, interview three brokerages or 3 teams for that
Yeah.
matter. But I think it's very, very important that you understand what is the offering
Yeah.
that they're
Yeah, you're
giving
right.
you.
Like a lot of people get hung up on commission splits, and I'm with that because
It's irrelevant.
it's so irrelevant in the beginning. And
First couple of years it is.
And I think
I
the
agree.
brand of the company could be important, but I think if you can get on a team, that is the experience, the education, and you might pay for that education in your commission splits for a year or two, but you come out of that 2 years later as a champion, ready to
Yeah.
crush it. I love it.
I
you
agree.
have to survive. I mean, the issue is becoming more profitable. A split is, if you want to talk about, maybe you're increasing your profitability. But if you're not doing any business, you're not profitable
100%
anyway.
is zero is
it-
zero, right?
It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
But again, you want to learn from those, and you want to make sure whoever you're spending this time with, that they have the resources and that they match what you're doing. And the final thing on that is, you're not going to learn this business by staying home in your sweatpants on the
Yeah,
couch.
for
all
sure.
right?
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. You have to be proactive. And I'll use an example. If somebody was going to teach me how to cook, I have to be in the kitchen with the other person.
You have to dice the onions.
Yes,
Kevin,
I have to be there
can
with
you cook?
them physically. No. I can survive. All right.
I love
Scrambled
cooking.
eggs. Scrambled
I know,
eggs, Kevin, for
I
life.
know, but I have limited
Scrambled
skills,
eggs.
but I'm not throwing a dinner party. But but the point is, I know enough. It's the same thing. I'm going to flip this around to you, Gus.
Yeah.
Even though I was in the mortgage business for a very short time, but if I was going to go into your business, and let's say you hired me tomorrow morning,
Yep.
I wouldn't be staying home on my couch. I have the contacts, so I could transition into being a mortgage banker very easily.
Sure.
However, I would want to sit within earshot of yourself or one of your successful individuals in your
Sure.
organization, because I want to hear the magic from somebody successful.
100%.
All right?
Yeah.
And you don't need
That
to
hits
tell
home.
me. You don't need to tell me to do that. I
Yep.
know I need to do that because I want to hear what you're saying, when you say it, and how you say it,
Yep.
so I can understand and
And
be as
then
successful as you are.
articulate that into your own personality to be able to do it.
Well, exactly.
100%.
It's
Yeah.
a contact
I love
sport.
it.
It's a belly-to-belly sport. You got to put in the outflow to get the inflow, but you got to put in the reps.
All right,
It's
so
okay.
so
absolutely.
Kevin's from Comac. He's not in Comac anymore, but he's from Comac. So he's a
I
long.
still do business there.
Yeah, no.
I have a listing right
so
now there
we-
that I
we're
sold
gonna
myself.
we're gonna play a little
In
game.
Comac?
Yes.
We're gonna guess. We're gonna guess these answers now. So we're gonna ask you some very very basic
Is it,
questions.
is it a drinking game?
I think we could drink to this. Yeah, I think we
We'll
could
drink
drink.
to it. We'll
Yeah,
drink
just
to it.
keep
Okay.
the label sideways. Yeah,
And then I have to go fairly soon.
yeah, we'll get you out of here.
I have a client appointment.
All right. So first question.
Yes.
Yeah, keep it. That's good. That's good.
That's
good.
good.
Yeah.
You have a client appointment after this?
Yes, I'm seeing my 5-headed client,
5 heads. I like
5 siblings.
Oh.
Yes, it's an estate. I already have the listing, but we're having a family meeting, so
it.
Got
Okay.
it.
Hopefully,
Well, you'll be
everything's probated.
warmed up and ready to go.
All right. So first
I
question.
need to be warmed up. There's 5 of them and 1 of me.
First question is Mets or Yankees? Don't answer. Don't answer. I'm going to say Mets.
I'm going to say Yankees.
Yankees.
Okay, so I'm down 1. All right.
Okay.
Whoever loses, we're all going to drink anyways, but we'll keep a record.
1-0.
All right. Jets or Giants? Don't answer. I'm going to say Jets, even though I know he's got to be a Giant because he's a Yankee fan.
Yeah, it's 100% Giants.
No, Jets.
Ah, my man. Wow. He likes a little bit of pain.
1-1.
He likes a little bit of pain.
Wow.
All right.
You're a Jets fan, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think maybe because they were playing at Hofstra, going back.
Yeah, I was there when they were.
I'm a Bears fan. We're just as bad. We're just as bad.
Those are great years. All right. So, and we're Hofstra alum.
Yes, Hofstra's wonderful.
Yeah. I didn't learn
Great
much
school.
there academically, but I learned a lot about.
He's like, I
other
didn't learn
things.
much there.
Really? Oh
Yeah.
no, it was a great
You
experience.
learn about life.
Academics, I didn't do too much there. Anyways,
It's a great school.
it is a great school. I think it's spectacular. I wish my boys, my two older boys, applied there. They didn't apply there. Their mom pushed them to other schools. Anyway,
Knicks.
no, it's gonna be Knicks. Knicks or Nets. I'm going Knicks.
I'm going Knicks.
Next.
Yeah.
This is gonna be tricky because of the years. Okay, Islanders or Rangers. I'm going Islanders.
I'm going Rangers.
Islanders.
Yeah, because in the years, they were really
I
good.
lost.
They were really good in the '80s. They crushed it.
I love
they
hockey.
won 4 Stanley Cups in the '80s. Was it 4?
It
3?
was a lot.
It was a lot. They crushed it.
they had a great run.
had a great
They were
run.
like the Yankees.
Now-
I had
now,
no idea the Yankees were that
Kevin,
strong.
I don't know that Kevin really cares about this question, but I have to ask because we ask everyone: Nas or Jay-Z? I'm gonna guess Jay-Z, even though I'm a big Nas fan. I would go with Nas all day.
You would go, but I think Jay-Z was more mainstream.
I think Jay-Z was
I'd
more.
probably say Jay-Z.
Jay-Z, okay. And then we'll end it with, I know the answer to this one. Billy Joel or Bruce Springsteen? It's going to be Billy.
It's Billy.
Yeah, it's Billy.
Yeah, Billy.
Oh.
Hey, you're surprised at that.
I was surprised. I would have guessed Bruce.
Kevin, thank you so much.
Bruce is good, but I'd say
He's Long
Billy.
Islander, man.
We have Billy Joel right back there. We have a picture
Kevin,
of him.
thank you so much for
Yeah, you're
giving
awesome.
us your time and sharing so much of your, valuable experience and information. We're going to have you back on in the next few months because I think as this evolves, we're going to want your input. I feel like right now it's so premature. I didn't want to put you on the spot and start asking you questions that I think are just too premature, especially for somebody in your position right now.
I'm warmed up. I'm 30 years warmed up.
I know it's just such a sensitive topic, and I think until there's a little more stability and clarity on direction, I didn't want to do that to you. That's not what we're about. We're not about shocking people and making them on the spot. We really, really appreciate what you're doing out there, educating people on a daily basis, representing buyers. Buyers need that representation. We wish you all the best on.
and sellers, Gus.
Yes.
Yes.
But the buyers really need that representation. It's
Well, they definitely do, but also sellers really need to select an agent that understands that and that can communicate the different options they have.
no question.
I think sellers need help too.
Yeah.
And sellers become buyers. So
Yeah.
I think they need help too. But a lot of respect for what you've
Yeah,
done.
for sure.
We wish you nothing but the best. Continue on.
And we'll
Thank
have
you
you
very
on
much.
soon. Thanks, Kevin.
Cheers.
Thank you, guys.